Hello there. Welcome to a episode of the Gamers Guild where I am joined by Josh and Dallas to talk about the hobbying side of this game that we all love so much, and the art, the painting, the sculpting, and all those kinds of things. So I guess for those who are unaware, would you guys mind introducing yourselves real quick?
Let's go
Yeah,
first.
I think we'll go up the hierarchy first. So, low man first. So, hi, I'm Josh Colon. I'm the art director at Atomic Mass Games for Marvel Crisis Protocol in particular. So, I am responsible for the art and illustration you see on the character cards and the team tactic cards and marketing. And then occasionally I get to do some posing for the miniatures that you do, and you get to see. So those are either me or my fault. Blame me or whatever. And yeah, Dallas is my boss. Dallas, go.
Oh, wow, that was so forceful and
Mhm.
like administrative of you. My name is Dallas Kemp. I'm the creative director at Atomic Mass Games, and basically what that means is I keep my eyes on sculpting, I keep my eyes on painting, I keep my eyes on the art, anything creative. I kind of get my fingers in and work with it and touch it and help guide it along. And just basically, what I always tell Josh, my real job is to make everybody else successful. Like, I gotta make Josh successful, make Preston successful, make Marco successful. That's my real job.
And I dare say you guys have been doing great with those jobs. So thank you all for doing what you do and putting out this game that we love.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, we
Uh,
love it too.
That's really nice.
yeah, so I'm excited to kind of get into this because it's not something I have personally explored in depth too much, and I'm just really excited to get your additional inputs on some of the thought process that it's behind the sculpting decisions, the art decisions, and stuff like that. So I'm going to start out with just kind of over what I guess the almost 3 years now, AMG has been producing miniatures, and there seems to be a pretty steady climbing of ambition in the poses and sculpts,
Mhm.
all the way up to a massive bog tiger. So, with the tease that a new Hulk and Modoc are coming, is it fun to go back to have another chance to take a crack at some of these earlier releases now that you have more experience with the process of creating miniatures and models in the hard plastic?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's always like with any job, right? Like with any creative endeavor, with anything you do in life. I personally believe like you should always be stretching, you should always be reaching, you should always be striving for more, to do better, reach farther, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, like Captain Marvel said, right?
Something like that.
Higher, faster, further.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's you want to stretch your wings, and like even though I've been doing miniatures myself, I can only speak for myself. For over 30 years, been in the industry for not quite that long because I was a kid 30 years ago. Like there's always that need to like push and grow, right? Like and definitely going back and like looking at, as we learned the plastic material and learned our parameters, learned what the factory can do for us. You don't want to start out with a Hulkbuster flying through the air, right, on your first miniature because you're not really quite sure it works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's usually you don't see the big guys up in the air in miniatures. So we wanted you start here and you build up and you learn some lessons, you dip down. So it's to me that's like the most fun is going back and like pushing ourselves to be like, okay, well, we did this for this character, right? Like, what can we do for him now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of the time, Marco and I'm going to ramble. You got me on rambly day. I hope you're ready.
Always.
Like Marco and I are the worst offenders. Like we're not even done with the sculpt, and we're sitting there like this. No, this could have been so much better. This is like, well, I guess we got to send the deadlines tomorrow. So next time.
Mm-hmm. And I guess
Yeah,
it's always fun to get those next times.
Get those next times. Put them in the bucket.
yeah, like Dallas said, like something we talk a lot about is sort of honing our craft. Like we're
Mhm.
very much hopefully a better studio overall than we were 4+ years ago when we started.
Yeah,
like
4 years ago when we started.
yeah,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
we from everything from the game development to the miniatures to the art to just everything that we do, presentation, like we're always striving to improve and do it better. And the miniatures are no exception. Like you asked, is it fun to go back? It absolutely is. Because we get to kind of learn from what we did, from the weaknesses and the strengths, but also we love these characters so much that it's fun to be like, oh, now we can. You mentioned Hulk and MODOK, like, oh man, can we tap into more of a Hulk than we did previously? Can we tap into more of a MODOK? Without giving too much away, the answer is yes, 100%. This is one. Well, you'll see. And then we also, I mean, it's the one related. Dallas and I like to talk about this too.
I can't even stop smiling because like I'm like,
I know, yeah. I know. But we also go through our periods. Like we went through our explosion period at AMG with our minis for a while,
Mhm.
and then we went through
Okay, that wasn't on purpose. Like
No,
to
I
be
know,
fair,
I
that
know.
was-
It's just we just kind of go through phases. We went through, like obviously terrain, rubble, is always kind of a thing. We went through more sci-fi stuff. I mean, again, without saying too much, we're kind of like in a weird like teleporter dimension period that we just got through right now. And so yeah, so there's also phases, and part of that is us experimenting, right, with these minis or pieces of terrain,
yeah.
so that later on we can do it even better. Like everything built on itself, and that's sort of the philosophy we have here at AMG.
I mean, yeah, everything's a lesson, right? Like I mean, just without without Doctor Strange 1, you wouldn't have Storm.
Yeah.
Without Storm, you wouldn't have now I gotta think of somebody who's released that is like, oh, Black Swan,
Mhm.
or Super Giant. I mean, like all that stuff is iterative and it's just lessons being learned, like, um and that's the big push. That's the big dream and drive. And Josh gets to do this in art too, like to revisit, like, sometimes revisit tactic cards for, and which we'll get to art in a little bit, but like that
Yeah.
revisiting is that's a company wide kind of philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll touch on that a little bit here in a second. Yeah. So when doing art for a tactic card, what is the decision process between pulling art from a comic panel versus having like much more original art done for it, such as I know Adepticon had the really cool Ebony Maw Shush card where he's like kind of crawling over Doctor Strange versus something more like Disarm.
Right. It's a good question. So I mean, it pretty simply is we try to have all original art for what we consider like our core main releases, right? Like something is like, I mean, if something's a CP number, right? Not to get too technical, it'll more than likely have original art, 99% of the time. For pulls, we like to put those in like event kits and whatever. And the main reason for that is we like to draw from the Marvel library and the catalog and that experience, for the actual like smaller play kits, right?
Mhm.
And then we use the new art to sort of draw like the new or existing players in to the Marvel Crisis Protocol experience, right? Like, so the idea is that you understand more like the look and feel of Marvel Crisis Protocol now that you own a few of the core set and a few of your favorite characters. Now you're going to a convention or at home or at a store, you're playing one of our sort of event kits.
Mhm.
Now you're getting the Marvel experience, right? And we're sort of balancing that back and forth and trying to harmonize that. Again, that's not always going to be the case, but yeah, we're almost always try to have brand new art and everything that we do for the main stuff.
Okay, very cool. I guess that makes sense now, kind of like looking back through the catalog I have in my head of all the different stuff, all the, I guess, tie-ins from that kind of almost you can pull from a panel, or all
Sure.
kind of the ones from like separation anxiety or something.
Right, exactly. Now there are, again, now I'm rambling. There are some cases where there's a panel that's like so iconic that like would just like, for example, for Scarlet Witch's No More Mutants, you can't, you just need to do the panel from that comic. Like, why mess with something that's already perfect, right? So sometimes we do like, we're like, oh, just leave it, and I was like, all right, fine, I guess it's less work for me. I'm always very competitive because I'm always trying to like outdo myself and trying to outdo those comics that I loved as a kid. But sometimes,
I mean, I thought you could done better, but
well, thank you. See, that's the cheering from my creative director that I'm here for. That's what keeps me going.
Absolutely.
But sometimes, yeah, sometimes we just leave it because and once in a while, there's not one of those. Sometimes and you'll see these more. I think you might have already seen one or two, but we also do homages to famous comic book panels with new art, and you'll see more of those too coming in. So yeah, it's a balance.
I think you guys saw the Human Torch one, right?
That's right. They did see that one. Yep.
I think we showed that. Like, that's definitely an homage, and like that's that love of Marvel coming through. Like when we get together and we talk about tactic cards, or we have those meetings, or we're discussing stuff. Like it's we love putting those homages in. We love making callbacks to the Marvel universe, right? We love making callbacks to the giant stack of comics I have on the other side of the wall here. Like this is the stuff we love just as much as everybody else, right? It's just being able to put those callbacks in, being able to get those pulls because they just fit so well, like Josh said. Like, that's important, not just making new art, but and putting our stamp on it. But sometimes it is just important, right? Because I agree with Josh, right? That No More Mutants, man. That's just I can walk up to any collection comic book collectors and just be like, no more mutants, and then like it's in your head, right? You know what I'm saying?
It's iconic.
So jumping back to models and stuff, we have gotten so far a lot more sculpts that look like the healthy side of their characters than their injured sides. Is there a possibility of getting some characters released in a more beat up state? Or is that something that you guys kind of leave to the hobbyist and what they're able to manage?
See, you're gonna send me down a rabbit hole of hobby philosophy here. I will never say there's a possibility or not a possibility, right? Because the worst thing, I've seen companies before be like, we will never do this, and then 5 years later they totally do. And you just never know what kind of decision is going to affect the future, right? What you're going to be thinking about, or what kind of idea is going to come along in the future. But that said, philosophically, we are fundamentally a hobby miniatures game. That's just straight out of the box. We make hobby miniatures. We don't make any, and we don't make a concession to that, right? And we don't hide the fact this is a hobby miniatures game. So when you join the Marvel Crisis Protocol family, you're choosing to join a hobby miniatures game, which indicates that you will have hobby involved. If I took my favorite character or your favorite character, right, like Agent Venom, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we released him, and he's just like all busted and bruised, and he's all broken. Like, but everybody else is walking around kicking ass.
Yeah.
Right? It's it's like, well, wait a minute, why is my hero the busted chump, right? Like, now if you choose to do that, it's honestly I don't like to use the word easier, because I don't believe anything in miniature hobby is hard. It's practice,
Yeah.
You put in the time, and you're going to learn how to do it. It's much of a easier or smoother learning curve to take a miniature and kind of beat it up. It's much harder, or more, it takes more technical expertise to take a beat up miniature and bring it back to whole.
Yeah.
It's kind of like paints, right? It's like, I always tell people I like really, really thick paints. And they're like, yeah, but you paint with like washes, and you turn them on to washes. And so you obviously like thin paint. And I'm like, yeah, well, I can always thin paint, but you can't thick it.
Yeah.
Like it just has more. So for me, a miniature not damaged has more possibility than a miniature that is damaged.
No, that makes perfect sense. I love that, and makes yeah. All right.
Now, if the opportunity comes and it's just like the right idea, like maybe for a rivals pack, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, I can see some ideas in my head already, and it makes sense from a storytelling perspective of a rivals panel. I think you could see something, but that's just my philosophy um, on the damaged.
And in addition to that, there is a happy medium because sometimes when we have room in the frame, we do add alternative bits and stuff.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like again, not giving too much, but if you ever pick up our upcoming Sentinels pack, you know, you'll see what damaged stuff the Atomic Mass Games way looks like. You know, potentially.
Sometimes it just makes sense.
Yeah. And you have that option to do either or. And then we've done stuff like with Wolverine with like mask unmasked, and things like that. So there's definitely a possibility that we eventually might, if there's room, throw in a bit of battle damage here and there, but as long as it makes sense. But ultimately, Dallas is right? Like it's, you know, we want to give you the hero and all their glory, and then you can make it as a project to kind of, you know, add damage, you know, to taste.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, Sentinels, I mean, I'm sorry, you got to have a Sentinel with 3 slashes across it. I mean,
Man, I think we almost went a little too overboard. Like I'm so excited for people to see it. Like it's awesome.
Little laser scorching marking, and
you know,
That's so
you
good.
know, they deserve to be beat up.
They do.
they do. Curse those giant robots that we all love.
Mm-hmm.
So swapping back to art then, and I guess we kind of touched on this, but with all the tactic cards, they're pretty still traditional comic book style art. Not to say that there aren't vast differences in the range of what is kind of like comic book style, but has there ever been discussion for some of the promo cards or OP kits to be done in like a chibi style manga, traditional Japanese, Chinese art styles, or anything like that, going a little crazy?
Sure. Again, great question. I have to just we're gonna be very brief on this one. Yes, the hard answer is a very much yes, and very much stay tuned, and very much yes, very much yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. We have a whole thing. Yeah, Dallas. No, yeah, we have a whole yeah. But yeah, like we the standard cards. The standard cards are, you know, we try to let the artists have their style and everything, but we it is for the modern comic book style, like you said. But we're also fans of anime and chibi and stuff like maybe like sketch, more like sketch style, or like black and white or ink, brush ink, like
Yeah.
and there's artists that we have that specialize in that. And we're, you know, maybe we're building a little bit of a squadron of these people, that we can, you know, head up for different things that make sense. And then when we do it, when and if we do it, not if, when we do it, it's going to be pretty noticeable. Like you're going to see, you'll see it coming a mile away. So we're really excited about it. But yes, the answer is yeah. Oh yeah, I'm done. I gotta stop talking.
He'll just.
I'm not
he'll
trying to
just
get anybody
litter.
in trouble, but at the same time, I am very excited by whatever this future thing is.
I mean, once again, it's just exploring, right? It's,
Mhm.
you know, you have this medium that, you know, some of my favorite comic artists, like one of my favorite comic artists, Sam Keith, right? Like that guy goes from like this highly rendered black ink to like this cartoony, like, you know, almost like Saturday morning. And then, you know, Josh hears me talk about Sam Keith all the time. Like, and then the next page you open up and it's like this most gorgeous watercolor, you know, 2-panel spread.
Mhm.
And that's just one issue, right? That's just 4 pages. That guy takes you on journeys. And so comic isn't just that classic, you know, what we think about. And so I think it is important to show that as long as it's relatable to Marvel Crisis Protocol universe and helps tell our story, it's always a possibility, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because art is gorgeous. Art, just that's just a statement now.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and move on before I get anybody in trouble then. How often are there concerns about a sculpt influencing gameplay on the table?
Hmm.
Uh, I know that like the bog tiger is super awesome and all that, but I also know he's a little bit harder to fit into tight corners than some of the other like large base characters, as an example.
So
Every
design,
time, right? Every time, almost, right? Technically.
yeah. Well, no, no. Well, you should be here when Pagani and I fight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because Pagani's making a game, right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm making art. Um, just a peek behind the curtain on how the design works. We actually start with the sculpt. The sculpt is made long before rules are made, and that's purely down to timelines, right? It's just timelines.
Mhm.
We have a 2 year timeline to make a miniature. Rules don't take that long, so they start a little bit later now. So we get a little document. It's just like, Malekith, on a bog tiger. Well, actually, that's a bad example because that was added by me, not by, Schick usually writes up the brief of what we're making. But like, let's say we're making, Heimdall and, Scourge. It's like Heimdall and Scourge, 35 millimeter bases, come in a pack, 3 tactic cards, blah, blah, blah. And then we get that. And then I go, okay, well, I can't make Heimdall on a 35. We did make Heimdall on 35. I just looked over and he's sitting there. It's like, I need this character to be on a 50, and I give that
Mhm.
to Dev, right? Or we had this idea for the special effects or this character is much bigger than we kind of thought, doing some research, it makes sense for it to be on a 50 because it needs breathing room, things like that. So the game very much starts from a miniatures kind of starting point. And then
Mhm.
if you watch Main Extravaganza, you heard the story about how the bog tiger even came to be, right? That was
Yeah.
we had 4, 5, 6 different Malekith concepts, and we're a very collaborative group, to the point where we were showing the president of Asmodee North America, Steve Horvath, who just absolutely loves everything to do with Asgard. Every time I see him, he's just like, "What's new coming for Asgard? You gotta show me the stuff." And so I was showing him the Malekith stuff, and it was just always like, no, 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 no. So I went out and we visited him for some other stuff. But I sat down with him for an hour. He put aside an hour of his time, and we sat down, and I'm like, just paint a picture with your words. And I got out my sketch pad and just started drawing, right?
Yeah.
And we ended up with a bog tiger. Um, does it have like these considerations? Like we lifted the wings, I
Yeah.
made sure that the base was rising to get that tiger up more, right?
Mhm.
Because if you take anything like this and you bring it up, you get more space
Yeah.
on that 65. So we brought it up more. So we did all the little tricks that we can. But then on the other side of it is, okay, so you said he doesn't fit in a corner. I go back to my philosophy about miniature games. When we're playing a miniatures game, I should be asking you questions. You should be asking me questions. The
Mhm.
terrain should be asking you questions, and the terrain should be asking me questions. If the terrain is not asking you questions, then why are we playing a miniatures game, right? And so Malekith gets asked questions of terrain that other characters don't, and you have to adjust your play style. You don't get to put him in the best place. You have to choose what's the best place I can put him in. So it's making you think more and deeper about that placement. And to me, I find that very, very important and vital to the miniature game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say. So long answer, yes, we think about it, but we can't always make it where a character can just fit. Right? We're not making chess. Not the king
Yeah.
can't go in every square. Right.
Absolutely. And I know that there's other times like with Doc Ock where like his feet could easily stand on a 35 millimeter base, but by putting him on a 50 millimeter base, he has room for his arms to be dynamic and moving around and stuff like that.
Yeah, we could do. I mean, any character that you have on a 50, a lot of times you can put them on 35. It's just, and we do a lot of like, we take a miniature and we'll get the the preliminary sculpt, and we'll do a test print of it. And we sit there and we put it on different miniatures, right? Like, and sometimes you're just like, okay, well, let's put it on a 50 because it feels better. But then that means let's add a little more debris, right? And remember, those are not random rocks. There's a crisis in the city. Every single rock in the street is a rock from, like, we're trying to show to varying degrees, like the kind of battle going on that's happening in the city. It's not just random rock in the middle of the road. Also, I drove through some areas of the country where there are random rocks in the middle of roads. That argument is moot.
So that's a whole thing anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's real.
Cool. Then let's another art question then. So really, I love the different art that we even get just on the character cards. So what is the decision process behind picking the artists to do different characters? Because I know they all have kind of their own styles naturally. Tyler, for example, has a really awesome Agent Widow that's almost like cartoonish and fun, compared to Scott Kahn's Crimson Dynamo that has a lot of like reflections going on with the metals and some glow effects and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a couple of answers. The big one is we sort of internally have like everything we want to be cohesive, but obviously like if you read Marvel, like, different artists run different runs. So like the X-Men stuff will look a little different from Spider-Man's, comics and whatever, right? So we kind of take that to heart, and we sort of have this rough idea of like how all of our Spider-Man, like sort of like Spider-Man art direction goes versus our X-Men versus our Avengers versus Asgard versus Magic people. Now, that doesn't mean the artists don't cross over a bunch. They can and they will. But there's a certain, stylistic stuff that we go for that. For Tyler's great. Tyler Walpole, shout out, and Scott Cohen, great. For them, for the Avengers stuff, we went a little brighter. And for the Winter Guard, I kind of wanted a little bit more of that, like late 80s, early 90s, sort of heavier inked style kind of stuff. So it also does depend on the characters. Now, a lot of that too, I can peek behind the curtain, is building an artist roster is very time consuming and very difficult, and artist schedules and commitments, make things very difficult. So it takes a while to sort of build that sort of stable of artists, and so some of it was sort of testing a little bit too, testing who fits in with what. Now we're at a place where 4 years in, where we have this really nice stable of artists that you're going to start seeing, including Scott for sure, and Tyler when we can get him. He's super busy.
Yeah.
But typically we try to match, I guess, long story short, we try to match the artist to the project, and we try to match the project into this like consistent level of style in between each of the different sort of, like, I guess you can say, affiliations technically, a little bit broader than that. But yeah, and you're going to see some new artists coming up soon that I think you guys are going to really love. Like Patrick Brown's been doing a lot of stuff for us, and he's sort of become my, shout out to Patrick. He's the one that did that Human Torch, that Marvel's #1 homage. You're going to be seeing more of his stuff coming up, and you'll see like Gary Daniels and a bunch of other artists very, very soon doing some really interesting stuff.
Awesome.
Once again, that storytelling, right? So much of the thought around here goes into storytelling, telling those stories, and just little snapshots.
Awesome. I'm super excited for all the different artists and stuff coming. I love all that. So I guess last question about kind of the sculpting side of things. What has been the most challenging sculpt to translate from concept to reality that I guess you can share with us, obviously?
Probably Sentinels.
Okay.
Probably Sentinels. Sentinels went through a lot of work to get right. they're such an iconic and um, part of the Marvel universe. You want to get them right, and they kind of went through several different iterations, not just during the sculpting phase, but even just the rules and development phase, right? You know, we knew you were going to take multiples and stuff like that. So like, and that just amps it up, right? Like that just makes it hitting the sculpt better, more vital and important to the whole project. You know, it was kind of late that the Sentinel Prime came in, right? It was just like, oh, what if there was a Sentinel Prime that, you know, and there was two other little Sentinels. So like, okay, well that just adds to sculpting, right? It's just like, so you just back to sculpting, like, you know. So we actually started those, like, my God, I think I can't even say, I don't even want to say, because I'm afraid people will be like, what? Like, because it was so long ago that we started those, but we just kept wanting to make sure we got them right. And then the whole idea came down to like, well, what if they were posable, right? So now they're going through multiple steps of engineering to get that to work right. And like, you know, you have to like kind of redesign the hips a little bit from what we initially sculpted to make the ball socket work. So that one went, those definitely went through a lot of, from concept to reality was a lot of work. You know, I wouldn't say harder. It's just, you know, every little miniature, like every miniature is a unique puzzle to figure out. Even miniatures that you think are similar, and when you look at the design and you look at the concept that we start with, so many times we're sitting there and I'll be talking to engineers and Marco and be like, what do you think? Oh, this is the easy one, Dallas. And then we get into it, it's like, oh, this is not the easy one. And then we see something, it's just like, this is the hard one. And we're like, you know, oh, we just knocked that out, man. We did that, and you know, we just knocked that. So every miniature has a unique fingerprint of questions that it asks us to produce. But the Star-Lord's head, right, was that was a lot of figuring out from design, because that's a Marvel design that we got to stick to. And we immediately figured out like the way that his gribble, like all that gribble on the side, the way, if you learn how steel molds work, as soon as you figure out how steel mold work and you look at Star-Lord's head, it makes perfect sense why it's like that. It's plain as day. It's like written in the stars if you understand steel molds. So like that was a lot of like back and forth and like, well, how much can we get away with and how much should we keep and like how much do we need to keep and like all that stuff. So those are the ones that stick out in my head. Long story short.
Absolutely. And you're just making me more and more excited to both get hands-on and honestly just look at the Sentinels, because all you've given us are these like silhouetted pictures, and I'm excited.
Is that true? Wasn't there a render at a?
Yeah, I guess there was a. Oh, well, now I'm thinking back. Maybe, probably.
I don't think there was. Actually, I don't think there was.
I feel like I feel like we showed a render of the sculpts at Main Extravaganza, didn't we?
Well, all we did was show that picture. It was like, hey, they're coming, and then we remember it was like the end of the thing or whatever.
I am pretty sure that there was a render.
Maybe there was. Maybe there was.
Maybe I misremember. I
was going to say I'm going to go back and check after this, regardless. Now. Cool. And so I've got one more question on the art, and then I want to talk to you guys about kind of painting in general. And this might be one that gets you guys in trouble, so feel free to say no comment. But when a character appears on the Art of a Tactic card that hasn't come out in the game yet, is that a good sign that that character is at least like on your guys' radar for seeing the table? Or is it just a little bit more of a coincidence, like Black Cat on Disarm and Carnage on Battlelust?
Well,
I'm curious. I want to answer this, but I want to see how Josh answers it.
Yeah, because that's a good question. So I can say for Carnage and Black Cat that they were not a coincidence, because we know ahead of time, you know, our schedule, right? And so we do try to. Well, occasionally we'll drop hints. Now, because we get asked this a lot.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is, so we don't want to give the game away too much. The notion is, on the tactic cards, we're telling specific stories from the comics, or reference from things that happen in the comics, or the character's history. And these characters interrelate a lot. So you're going to see characters that like have like a backstory or whatever, right? Like, so the story always comes first. So that doesn't, so that, what does that mean? That means that just because a character's in a tactic card does not necessarily mean they're going to be out within a year or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we on the other hand, we do like to throw in some hints when we can, you know, and we like to tease people, and we like to sort of give them what, you know, like at least let them speculate when we can.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a balance, but yeah, we're very deliberate on what shows up on tactic cards. I'll say that, you know, I will say that.
Josh is always like, we gotta put this on this because it tells the story of the tactic card, and it's just like some random character. Like my answer to that is always the same answer Schick and I always give. On a long enough timeline, everybody's coming to the game.
Yeah.
Now, will every single random character that Josh throws on a tactic card make it? On a long enough timeline, everybody will make it to the game, because we want everybody's favorite to be represented in the game, because it's very important to make sure everybody feels like the game is for them, right? We're a community, you know? So on a long enough timeline, they're all spoilers.
Fair enough. Cool. So let's get into some painting stuff. And I guess first, because I know for several people, Marvel Crisis Protocol is their first miniatures hobby game. So since so many like new people are kind of jumping in with this, what do you guys recommend as the best starting place for somebody new to all of that? Do you like recommend starting practicing on like plastic little green army men, or what?
I'm a very much you get your feet wet kind of person, right? I started miniature games in 90, 91. I never thought to like be like, oh, I just purchased this box of miniatures. I should try out on something I don't own to try it out. I just started painting it, right? I just jumped in and started painting it. And honestly, you're just going to learn more from painting that, because like low green plastic men aren't of the same caliber. They don't ask the same questions. And people have this like there's always that discussion like, well, I don't want to mess it up. What are you messing up? Because I don't understand that. Like I'm being for real here. Like in my head, I don't understand what messing up is. It's a learning process. It's a hobby. It's not a goal. It's a destination. And it's a personal destination, or personal, it's not a goal. It's a journey. Sorry. And it's a personal journey, right? When I look at my miniatures from 1991 or 1990, I don't go, oh, I screwed them up. I go, man, look how far I've come. Like, you know, I barely I got stuff that I didn't even understand priming. My first miniatures, I didn't prime. I had no idea. And then I had no idea how to apply a shadow. And so I just didn't paint the shadows, the base color, and just left them black, right? I'm like, I would never do that now, because like now I'm like, oh, I need a complementary cool color to go against this other warm color that's, you know, expressed in the anger and frustration in the face, but I want the knuckles, you know. I get into that kind of discussion now. So I don't think, you know, to me, you're not messing up your miniature. You're starting your journey. And it's okay to look back and see where those floodwaters hit you know, and if you get better, go back and revisit them, right? To me, that's a better. I love that's like I don't strip my miniatures, right? Um, I went to see my 1991 miniature up against my 2022 miniature. I went to hold those in my hand. I went to look at them and I went to compare like those elements and be like, man, look at what I've learned. And I see a lot of painters, and especially a lot of the like real famous painters and the real top tier painters. That's what they do, right? Because it's very important to have that thing to look back on. It's less important than trying to like nail it today, right? It's the future, it's the journey, it's the asking the questions. Once again, everything goes back to asking questions. It's the asking the questions and just getting stuck in and just going on your journey, right? We're going to get into the discussion of worthy now, because like that's what the worthy's designed around, is your journey. And not everything should be compared to the best miniature you've ever seen painted. You should only be comparing to the last miniature you painted. Like if you're looking at Roman Lapat or Banshee, and you're the first time you've ever picked up a miniature and you're like looking at that, you're not asking the right questions. You're never going to get there because you fundamentally started on the wrong question path. Like it's kind of like bands. I always talk about bands like think of your favorite band. How many songs do you think you've never heard from them? Piles. They have piles of songs because they're never going to let you hear the ones that didn't work, right? Every now and then you get outtakes and B-sides, but the fundamental reality is if a song doesn't work, you never actually get to hear it. It's the same with miniature painting. You get to see more of my A sides than my B sides, right? So compare yourself to the last thing you painted, get stuck in, start painting, and ask questions. Look at people that inspire you. Look at people who legit have knowledge and learn to decipher who has knowledge, and ask them questions. The information's out there. That's where I get started.
Okay, absolutely. Josh, what about you?
Honestly, I'm way more of a novice when it comes to painting, but being around Dallas all these years, like it has taught me that it is important to not be afraid to fail and sort of invest, and not to think of failure as like a thing you do. Like just like he said, like just have fun with the process and try to learn a little bit each time, and improve. I still have a long way to go. I paint way too thick still, and I paint, and my priming leaves a lot to be desired, but I still have fun every time, and I try to learn a little bit each time I do it. And I think, yeah, if you're gonna start, honestly, instead of hemming and hawing, just start, just do it, and just have fun, just again, keep the ones that you did, like Dallas said, and then honestly, I guarantee you in a year or two, you'll look back on it and be like, oh my God, I've improved so much. Like seriously, it happens every time. I see it all the time.
The failing thing, like that's like Josh knows, I talk about failing all the time. And I think people have this like fear of it. And the honest reality is any of the great like artists, songwriters, poets, novelists, like all those people have learned to embrace and learn to love the fail, as I like to say, like, because to me, failing isn't a failure. That's just learning. Think of all the things you are good at and how many times you messed it up getting there, right? This is just a new one of those things. So failing isn't a failure. Not learning from the failure, that's a fail, right? Every novelist has pages and pages of stuff that you'll never see and never hit print. Every songwriter has a song that will never be sung, because it just didn't work, and that's okay. And you just keep going, and it's all about your journey. Once again, get on your journey, get in there, screw stuff up. I got tons of screw ups around me, and they're in bags and boxes and stuff like that. That's just part of life. And when you think about the things you are good at, that's another thing, is like everybody gets focused on this new thing. Oh, I want to be good at it immediately. But think of all the things you are good at and how many times you kind of stumbled in that, you know, just being a person. I fail every day at just being a person, and I just learn from it.
All right. To I guess kind of use the metaphor that's going on. Do you go and ever do like touch-ups on old minis in the same way that like a band would go and make some changes to a song, or kind of like once you're happy with it, you call it done, you just call it done?
Oh, so there's two sides of that. First off, no miniature is a forever friend. And I use the word forever friend a lot. Brushes, not forever friends. Paints, not forever friends. You know, if you think a brush is going to last you the rest, if you think you're buying a $20 like, you know, Kolinsky Sable is going to last you for the rest of your paint life, I've got bad trouble for you. If you think a pot of paint is going to last you for the rest of your painting existence, I got bad news for you. Like, they're just not forever friends. And honestly, miniatures, the paint job on a miniature isn't either. They take a hit. You know, these are going back to, like, I'm sure anybody who's paid any attention to us has heard me or Schick. My philosophy is every miniature has a destiny, and it's your job to choose the destiny. I'm painting a tabletop Electra, but over here I have a display Kingpin, right? And over here I have a studio Redacted, and over here I have a competition something else, right? Each one of those miniatures have a different destination or destiny. If it's for the tabletop, it's going to get bumped, it's going to get beat, it's going to get bonked, and it's going to get boffed. It's just the nature of the existence. You're going to touch it, you're going to pick it up, you're going to put it in a bag, you're going to shove it in foam, you're going to do stuff. So when my paint gets chipped, because that is the inevitableness, you know, that's just entropy. That's just an inherent factor of the universe, right?
Yeah.
You got to go back and touch that up. Now, as far as like looking at something and being like, I want to update it, that's a very rare thing for me. If I do it, it's more like I just get the miniature again and paint it to a new standard. Because once again, if I'm looking at something and I have the desire in my heart to update it, then I want to go full glow up, and then I want to have something to compare it to. I go back to this so much, right? Like there's nothing more, there's no better way to learn from something than being able to hold the two things in your hand and actually compare and contrast. If you took a miniature and you're like, I want to redo this, and you dunk it in some stripper and you pull it out, you don't remember, or you don't have that physical thing to compare them to actually learn the lessons. You have your memory, and one of the worst things in human like existence is the human memory.
Absolutely. I've still got luckily, after selling a bunch of minis from back in middle school when I first attempted the painting thing, where it's super thick globs of paint and all that kind of stuff. But I miraculously found one before moving out of my old house, and it's like, cool, this is going to be in the display case. And I kind of have like a miniature from every year, and it's amazing, even just how Steve Rogers looks next to my Sam Wilson now. Kind of a thing.
That's that journey, and honestly, with miniatures, this is a hobby miniatures game. Like, if you sat down and paint it and it's not the best, did you have fun? Did you learn something? If the answer to those two is yes, then you didn't fail at all. You just painted a miniature in your hobby. You did something that brought you joy. You got to, you know, maybe you didn't know who honey badger is, right? And you go and you research honey badger, and you got some honey badger up on your computer monitor, and you're like, man, I'm fascinated by this character. What a fun, wacky, interesting character, right? She's so spunky and smart, and like she's so badass. And then you paint it, and like the whole time you have a smile on your face, and maybe the paint is a little glunky, maybe you got the eye a little wonky, maybe the hair like the color from the hair splashed on the yellow a little bit. you didn't fail at painting that miniature. You succeeded more than I did, even, to be perfectly honest. Like, because you just loved it, right? And to me, that's way more important, because that's the fundamental. Like, when you break down what miniature hobby is, that's it, right? 90% of your time is alone, or preferably, like the way I like, painting communally with a group. But it's that expression of you on a miniature, and that you cannot fail at as long as you're having fun. And then, like, I love that you brought up that you actually kept your old gloppy miniatures from your middle school days. Because I'm gonna be honest, if I showed up at somebody's house and, like, the very first thing I want to see, honestly, if they're like, oh, I got these new miniatures I painted, but I also got these miniatures for 20 years ago, I'm like, I want to see those.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm hanging out with, like, other professional painters, like, those are things we want to see. Like, I want to see those, because we want to be like, oh my God, like, oh wow, holy cow. Like, that is way more exciting, because I want to see where that youth and that exuberance started. And then I want to see where your path is. And then I want to have a discussion, because this is me. Like, I'm a teacher at heart. Then I want to have the discussion, like, well, where's your path going, and how can we help you get there? But without those landmarks, I can't help that. I can't see those.
Absolutely. Josh, what about you?
Do I go back to no? Because honestly, I'm not good enough to quite yet. But I'm very much forward-looking guy. You know, I'm still learning as I go forward. But everything that Dallas has said is true. Like, it really. I was doing some clearing up of some old minis and stuff in my storage space, and I did see some of my first, like, old minis from when I was like 16, and even then I did see some, like, improvement and stuff, like just comparing it or whatever. You know, like, you really do when you go back. It is kind of like a journey. It's kind of like time traveling back in time and getting to shake hands with your 16-year-old self and be like, hey, you know, it's okay. It's gonna be, you know, we all don't get to, like, be Dallas Kemp level, but we do get to be in a place where we, you know, dislike our work less, right? And ultimately, just end up having more fun and be less critical of ourselves too. That's a big part, you know, as well.
Well, I mean, even for Josh is a writer. Josh is an artist. Like, so he gets to look at this for, like, multiple things, right? He can look back at his old writing and look at his new writing and compare and contrast that. You know, I look at my old drawings and my new drawings, and, like, I'm getting better every day. And I don't even draw as much as I should or want to. And every human endeavor is a journey. And once again, I go back to that. If you're comparing yourself to Michelangelo, right, not the turtle, but the artist.
Oh, there's, like, another one?
Yeah, there's two. If you're comparing yourself to those greats, and today's your first day on the job, you're already setting yourself up. Like, it's good to have, like, those, like, okay, aspirational. That's different. Like, you got to frame it in that, like, someday, how did that person get there, and how am I going to get there? Because my path might not be the same, but I need to start my path. And today's the path of 1,000 steps, right? Absolutely. Today the rocks are bigger than the rocks in the future.
Cool. Well, I've just got two last quick questions for you guys. Do you have a favorite, like, painting style or technique that you think is underappreciated that you'd like to shout out, like glazing, non-metallic metal, black lining, any of that kind of stuff?
Josh, you want to do this one first?
Yeah, because mine comes from the place of, like, I can't do it, but boy, howdy, I would love to be able to. Like, honestly, even when I was a kid, like, whenever I would see really good non-metallic metal, I just felt like magic, obviously like anything, there's like good and bad or effective and not effective. Right. But when you see really good, like, I didn't even know you could do that when for the first few years, like I thought, oh, you want metal, you get like a silver or a gold or whatever, and you just put it on there. And I saw there's people out there that can fake it and make it look cell shaded like that. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And so that always really blows me away. But as I'm older, so I guess I'll give you too. Again, seeing what Dallas or like what Brendan or other studio painter, what they do, like just with like glazes and like thin paints, like, and just like this brush blending technique, like it's incredible. Like it really is incredible. Like it just adds so much like depth and dimension to these minis. Like it literally just, it's like watching them come alive. It's incredible. So yeah, just whatever Dallas does, I'm always amazed. That's pretty much
ridiculous. Josh has held studio miniatures in his hand, so he's seen like what that stuff looks like, and it's as far as like techniques go, I'm a firm believer, like anything in your pocket, every good carpenter needs every tool in his pocket, and you don't pull out a screwdriver to put a 16 penny nail into a stud, right?
Yeah.
Right. So every tool, every job needs a tool. So I think you should learn, for me, I think you should learn every technique, but that doesn't mean you use every technique. But understand the philosophy and how it works first, and then dismiss it. And style, I have a different opinion of style, because that's a subjective thing.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if I have a shout out. Like I'm doing a lot of glazes and stuff like that. I'm very much a proponent of 2-brush blending, especially when done the actual proper way, which you rarely ever actually see. But just learning all the techniques, knowing when to apply them, when to use them, when not to use them, when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, and getting the best miniature you can. And for me right now, it's all about speed. Like, man, there was a time when, it's all about speed. Now I paint miniatures in 2 hours or less.
Yeah.
Right. To me, it's way more vital. When I see somebody post, I just spent 15 hours on this league. I'm like, I can show you how to do that leg in 2 seconds. Like let me show you some techniques to help.
Yeah.
And get possibly and usually a better result. Once again, goes back to my education. Like I want to teach.
And I guess on this note, let me just shout out to all the painting streams you guys have been doing for X-Wing, Marvel, Legion, all of it as fantastic resources to kind of learn some of the techniques that you're talking about, the wet blending and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we can only get an hour, right, per stream.
Yeah, but you guys have been doing it for like a couple of years now, so that's like 50 hours of painting stuff.
There's hundreds of hours because there's 2 to sometimes 3 paint streams a week. But it's all those streams together. Like you can go find all sorts of techniques. And I think in the future I'd like to do a little more serialized, like targeted kind of stuff. But like, today we're going to show you exactly how I'm going to do this. So I could see that happening, because I want to teach people to get those techniques and speed up their painting and get success, right? Yeah. Let's get some success and get some miniatures on table, because painted miniatures roll better.
Always.
And cool. Once again, it's a hobby game, man. I want to play against your painted army. I don't care what level it's painted at. I want to play against your painted army, and I want to play with a table full of painted terrain, and I want to tell that story, right? Because that's what's important, is that story that you and I have at the game table for an hour and a half. Like those big moments where, Logan jumps off a rooftop and just takes out Cap, because it happens,
Cool. Well, my last question for you guys is a little bit more of a fun one. What is a comic arc that you have read recently that you would like to recommend to anybody who's watching?
Oh boy. The
Josh is gonna say Devil's Reign.
the Chip Zdarsky, ignoring you, the Chip Zdarsky, Margot Cicchetto, Devil's Reign, Daredevil is has been stellar and fantastic. And also the current one that's called The Red Fist, where Elektra continues to be Daredevil, is some of the best comics, not just Daredevil, but comics I've read in years. Very, very good, and the art is gorgeous, and I highly recommend it. Dallas, God,
What? I just know you so good.
whatever. I know what you're gonna say, and you're actually correct in saying it.
Do you know what I'm gonna say? Because
You're gonna say Marauders. You're gonna say Marauders, which is a really good.
Oh God. Okay, first off, Elektra's Daredevil costume is amazing.
Amazing.
I think Elektra's Daredevil costume is just amazing. Marauders brings me such joy because just Pirate Captain Kate is just the best thing ever. Especially like the first 6 issues where she has a busted nose and she's got the knuckle tattoos. It's just the best thing ever. I was going to say, I recently went back and I reread oh no, hang on. The alternate reality, Josh.
Oh, Secret War?
No.
Which one?
Why can't I remember?
Ultimates?
X-Men. Wolverine's got one hand.
Oh, Age of Apocalypse.
Age of Apocalypse. I went back and reread Age of Apocalypse. I totally think everybody should go back and reread that because that is the pinnacle of insane comics, and I loved every second of it.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that one's a ride. I looked at it again a couple of years ago myself, just flipping through the Marvel Unlimited, and I was just kind of like, oh man, this was wild.
It's so wild. It's such a journey, and like it's got such it's so many cool ideas and some cool characters come out of it. I just went back and reread it recently and just had so much fun rereading it because I hadn't read it since it came out, and it was just fun. Just go back and reread it. Or go catch up on, or go back. Here's one for go back and read X-Men Red and read how awesome that run is. It's 20 years now, right? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And Cassandra Nova is just a villain, just a monster. So I suggest go back and rereading that too.
Okay. Awesome. Well, in all seriousness, again, thank you guys for joining me and talking about this, giving some awesome insights on just kind of the process behind the game we love. Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
We love talking process.
Absolutely. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.
Doing a song for Nathan, Gamers Guild. It's time to end the stream, and it's time to go now.